Rotary Friday. Welcome to the 21st General Membership Meeting of the 107th year of Phoenix Rotary 100. I am Andy Mosley, and it is my great honor to serve as your president this year. What an amazing day. Thank you. Stop. What an amazing day it is to be a member of the best Rotary Club, Phoenix Rotary 100. Woohoo! Our roving Rotary reporter today is Mr. Andy Gutierrez. Thank you, Andy. We appreciate it. Next, we have Mr. Roger Mars for our invocation and pledge.
I thought I would present as an inspirational moment or prayer this morning a document from history. In April of 1945, when the Red Army liberated the Ravensbrück concentration camp, which had been established as a camp for women, and where 92,000 women and children died during the Holocaust. They found this on a piece of paper near a dead child. It was scrawled on wrapping paper, and it reads as follows, and I think it's a lesson that serves us well today. Lord, remember not only the men and women of goodwill, but also those of ill will. Do not only remember the suffering they have inflicted on us, remember the fruits we brought forth thanks to this suffering, our comradeship, our loyalty, our humility, our courage and generosity, the greatness of heart that all of this inspires. And when they come to judgment, let all those fruits we have borne by their reward be their reward and their forgiveness. Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Roger. And now, Miss Bernadette Hirsch, Vice President, Commercial Lending at K-State Banks, with our visitor and guest introduction.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Sit down, please.
We're out of practice.
Yeah. Please sit down. Give everyone a second. All right. We have some guests with us today. In person, we have Brendan Mulry, who's here with us today. We have our guest speaker, Justice Bob Brutinel, with us also. On Zoom, we have Jim Dowler with Sun City West, Brig Singh, who is the Secretary and President-elect of Bhopal Mills, India, 3040 Rotary, and Shavinda Singh of Bhopal Mills, India as well. Thank you so much for attending. In person, we have Germana Delberto with District 4660. Thank you for being here with us. And Kyle Smith with Prior Lake Rotary. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernadette. And welcome to all of our guests and visitors. Next, we have our Secretary's report, Elizabeth Wistoff, Development Director of Crozier Community of Phoenix. Elizabeth?
Thank you, Andrea. Happy Rotary Friday, everyone, or should I say, buon venerdì a tutti, since we're here at an Italian ristorante. I have a few announcements to make. First, please keep Chuck and Wilma Emerson in your thoughts and prayers. Chuck is rather unwell, so please let him and Wilma know you're thinking of them and sending best wishes with a card or an email to brighten their day. Tomorrow at 6 a.m., please join fellow Rotarians from 6 to 8 a.m. to pack food boxes for St. Luke's of the Mountains Mobile Food Pantry. Please wear a mask and gloves and bring your own water. The address is at 848 East Dobbins Road in Phoenix. Please contact Bob Withers for more information. And on this Sunday, please join us for the outdoor old-fashioned breakfast with a twist from 9 to 11 a.m. in Alistair's front yard. There will be delicious breakfast burritos for sale, as well as complimentary coffee, juice, and water. Please email your RSVP to Valerie today if you haven't already. It's a great opportunity for fun and fellowship, and we will be collecting water bottles for the Salvation Army. Please join us. Finally, don't miss Celebrate Diversity, a Rotary online program on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Next Friday, April 2nd. The keynote speaker is Rotary International President Holger Nack, and you can register online through the club news that hit your email boxes last Tuesday. So now it's time for table ambassadors and grazie molto.
You want to go ahead and take everything?
We doing a breakout session?
So we apologize. We're not sure how to set up those breakout sessions. Monty did them in the past, so that's why we're just making it 2 minutes long. We thought maybe we'd try to be able to connect to somebody's phone, and it really is just, it's short and sweet and hello and
So,
Tony. Yes,
so
sir.
how about if Rotarian Singh and his wife share with us what they're doing in their beautiful country of India?
There we go. That sounds perfect. Thank you. We just
You're
need
on
you to,
pause. You're on mute.
do you mind it? There we go.
Yeah. Good morning, all members of Rotary Club of Phoenix 100. It's a beautiful day, clear day, and we are all enjoying at our respective places. Yeah, I am Rotarian Brigadier Shivendra Bahadur Singh. In short, Brigadier SB Singh, and my wife, Rotarian Dr. Indu Singh. We are from India, central place of India, Bhopal. Can everyone hear me? Okay, clear? Okay.
Yes,
Perfect.
I visited your city in
Oh, so
2017.
nice. So
Yes.
nice.
Yes, we had a Rotary exchange.
Oh, that's very nice. Nice to know. So we are in Bhopal, and in Bhopal there are 13 clubs, and our club is a Rotary Club Bhopal Hills, HILLS, not MILLS. It is Bhopal Hills. Yeah, so it's under District 3040. In District 3040, there are about 94 clubs and about 2,300 members. In our clubs, in my club, we have about 50 members. And as far as the projects and all are concerned, generally we do one project per month. We are not talking about the COVID situation is pretty bad, but with challenges we have opportunities also. We did quite a lot of service projects which are related to COVID during these times also. So we did quite a lot. So the life goes on like that. And I will, request Indu to say something.
So good morning, everyone, and namaste from India, from our side. We are really glad to be here. Actually, my son and daughter-in-law, they are here in American Express. So they were expecting their first child. So that is how we were here. And we were supposed to go back on 28th April. But because right now the COVID in India especially is on a quite high peak, so our doctor friend suggested to delay the going there for some more time. So we'll be going back now in probably in the next month, June, we'll be going back. And I'm basically a psychologist and counselor, therapist. and also working in school as a counselor, senior psychologist there. I'm taking psychology classes. So I'm busy with all my online counseling also, and my classes and all. And of course, with the Rotary projects, we have undertaken Happy School project. We completed just last year with all the parameters of Happy School. And we also take career counseling sessions and personality development sessions in government schools there, as well as, of course, health related issues, also health and hygiene. And we do have medical camps in the school. So, and we also have scholarships as well for the deserving students. So a lot of projects we do, and other clubs from our district, they are also having their dialysis unit and medical facilities providing to the needy people. So good that we are part of Rotary, and especially with the international community. We do have friendship exchange also, like just now, I think Tony, yeah, you mentioned that you had come to Bhopal. So we last year, last year, yeah. Yeah, so we hosted people from Canada also. We hosted people from US. So it's a good feeling. It's a good feeling to be internationally connected.
It is.
Thank
I
you.
love-
Thank you very
I
much.
love the Rotarians there.
Yeah.
We appreciate your update, and we're going to go ahead and keep things moving along. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, friends. I just want to update you on a couple of things before we get to our program. Past President Phyllis Senseman reached out to me recently, and she works for Cigna. Cigna has an opportunity to help extend or distribute the vaccine, and they need volunteers. We were hoping that we could rally Phoenix Rotary 100 and some other Rotary clubs to help with this distribution campaign. So keep your eye on the calendar. We're going to secure 1 or 2 sessions on a Saturday, and we're hoping that you'll be able to help us fill in. We will need approximately 150 volunteers to help distribute the vaccine. This is out of Westworld. It's all air conditioned, it's cooled, we're not going to be outdoors. So there are 2 shifts. There are 2 6-hour shifts. And again, I've reached out to the district, and I think that the district will also help find other Rotary clubs to work with us. It's another way that we can get the brand of Rotary out into the community. Thank you. Our IT specialist has us working in the right direction. So speaking of the district, have any of you seen the billboards with Rotary Week of Service, or in your local newspaper or your publications, the different ads that are going on of Rotary Week of Service? Boy, I've seen them everywhere, and so happy that the district is promoting that. They have really done a great job. Rotary Week of Service, of course, is April 17th through the 24th. They also were able to secure a proclamation from Governor Ducey that April 17th through the 24th is Rotary Week of Service in Arizona. So, yay! Yesterday was Earth Day, and it made me think about Rotary and honestly about all of you and what we are currently doing in our communities. Rotary members believe that we have a shared responsibility to take action on our world's most persistent issues. You know, we have over 35,000 plus clubs worldwide that want to work together to promote peace, to fight disease, provide clean water, sanitation, and hygiene, to save mothers and children, to support education, and to grow local economies. Rotary's mission is to provide service to others, promote integrity, and advance world understanding, goodwill, and peace through our fellowship of business professionals and community leaders. And I know Phoenix 100 members are people of action. We are one of those clubs doing an outstanding job uniting people and taking action to create lasting change in our communities and in ourselves. And I personally want to thank all of you and all of you for doing and for being so supportive and being connected with Phoenix 100. Thank you. Now, in place of a Paul Harris Award today, Ken Kuipers has sent a video. Again, because of our technology setup, the Zoomers will be able to see the video. We unfortunately will not be able to see it, but I'm going to hold the microphone to the speaker and hopefully you'll be able to hear it. All right, so here we go, Valerie. And tell me if there's feedback.
Showers in vicinity. Clouds.
Critical condition after.
Let's be honest, the world can seem scary. Violence, poverty, disease, corruption, pollution. The problems just seem too overwhelming, too big. You are just one person, right? Not if you are a Rotarian. You are part of a club, part of a district, part of an international network of 1.2 million Rotarians in 35,000 clubs in 200 nations. This makes you part of the largest and most impactful service organization in the world. As Rotarians, you have roughly the same human power as the globe's most powerful militaries, with the added benefit of being woven into the fabric of your community. Rotary as a global organization connects you with a network of passionate community leaders, focused on positive change through service and the four-way test. Rotary's 6 areas of focus strengthen that network into a powerful force for peace. So, what if we started thinking about Rotary as more than a collection of service clubs, and just started thinking of ourselves as a global peace-building force? What if together we wage peace? Just imagine Rotarians building a world beyond war. But first, some background. Did you know that we are living in the most peaceful period in human history? Wars are less common and kill less people. Violence against women and children is the lowest in history. Homicides have decreased dramatically in much of the world. Genocide and other civilian killings are less prevalent. The number of democracies is increasing every year, and human rights are recognized in much of the world as a cornerstone of basic governance. The world is not falling apart as the media might lead us to believe. In fact, measurable trends support the emergence of a global peace system that today rivals the global war system. Trends that led to the development of international institutions like the United Nations aimed at preventing war. Trends about the protection of civilians. Trends proving nonviolence is more effective than armed resistance. Trends toward the proliferation of peace education. Trends favoring the economics of peace over the economics of war. And trends leading to the flourishing of international law, treaties, and courts. So what if we changed our mindset as Rotarians to match the current realities, the current science? The good news is, Rotary already set us up for success with the 6 areas of focus. When you build economic opportunity for communities, Rotary builds peace. When you provide education where education is not available, Rotary builds peace. When you provide clean water and sanitary conditions, Rotary builds peace. When you improve on the health of women and children, Rotary builds peace. When you prevent and treat disease, Rotary builds peace. And when you focus specifically on peace and conflict prevention and resolution, the world isn't that scary after all, because peace is you, and you are Rotary. Go wage peace.
Okay, thank you. It is a beautiful video, and I'm sorry that you all couldn't see it, but it is quite an impactful message. either way. And now what we're all waiting for, Sam Thumma, judge, and I have to say, Sam, when I was practicing my script, I go, Arizona Supreme Court. Oh, wait, no, Arizona Court of Appeals. Did you guys get that? Yeah. With our program introduction, Sam.
Thank you, Andrea. And you're in for a treat today. I'm delighted to introduce our speaker, Chief Justice Robert Brutinel on the Arizona Supreme Court. I'm going to tell you just a little bit about Bob, and then tell you a little bit about some things he's doing to keep everyone in the branch and outside accountable. And then Bob will have some prepared comments and then entertain questions. Bob received his master's degree from Duke Law School, go Blue Devils. His law degree from the University of Arizona, go Wildcats. And then his undergraduate degree from Arizona State, go Sun Devils, right? So he has been on the Supreme Court for about 11 years. Before that, he served on the Superior Court in Prescott, Yavapai County, for about 15 years. And unique, at best I can tell, in the history of the state of Arizona, he was extraordinarily active in leadership for juvenile courts. Sort of America or Arizona's most needy, youngest individuals who at times have been treated in ways that we would not want to discuss over lunch. And not only was he presiding a juvenile court judge in Yavapai and then presiding judge in that court, he also was recognized as the court-appointed special advocate nationwide of the year, the CASA of the year. That's an enormous recognition and honor. And he was also recognized as man of the year by Prescott Leadership. So Bob has not only had extraordinary influence and leadership within the branch, but within the communities that he served. Let me also mention a couple more things about Bob. I get to work with his wife, Jennifer Campbell. We serve on the same court, and that is a delight. Bob is not only a friend and a leader, but a really good neighbor. He lives real close to Charles Emerson and Wilma Baston. Please, please, please keep Charles and Wilma in your thoughts and your prayers. Let me then, before I sit down and listen, mention a couple more things. One more thing that Bob has done. It is common for courts, and indeed expected of courts, to have strategic plans, right? They're created, and sometimes, maybe more often than sometimes, they're set on a shelf somewhere until it's time to update them 5 years later. That's not Bob. That is not Bob. Bob has a strategic plan. I'm going to list the 5 pillars of that plan, and every year he holds us accountable. Every year he'll update how we're doing, whether we're working toward or away from those goals. But let me list those 5 goals and see if you think these make a lot of sense, because they do to me. Goal 1, promoting access to justice. Goal 2, protecting children, families, and communities. Goal 3, promoting judicial branch excellence and innovation. Goal 4, enhancing professionalism within Arizona's courts. And goal 5, promoting public trust and confidence. Boy, those are terrific pillars, things that on my best day I keep in the front of mind. With that, let me turn it to Bob, who will speak about Arizona State Courts. Bob, welcome to Rotary 100.
Well, Sam, thank you for the kind introduction. I appreciate your comments. Sam is a tremendous judge of the Court of Appeals, but he's also tremendous in terms of his service to the community and his willingness to do things outside the job, over and above the job, whether it's access to justice or whether it's working on the Plan B committee to talk about how the courts are going to get through this pandemic, or whether it's service at Duke or nationwide to talk about how to make court systems better. And Sam, if I could just keep your cats out of my backyard, I'd be a happy guy. It's a pleasure to be here. It's delightful to have an opportunity to speak with all of you today. I've been to one of your meetings previously at the Phoenix Country Club. Charles Emerson was kind enough to take me. And at the time, Alistair Adele was the president of the club. Obviously, we've had, as the Attorney General here in Maricopa County, the opportunity to work with Alistair over the years, and we wish her the best in her recovery. I understand she's coming along well, and we're delighted to hear that. it's great to see all of you, particularly those of you that are here in person. It's nice not to have to wear a mask in a restaurant or at a meeting. I have to tell you that we had our first big in-person meeting in the court system about 2 weeks ago. We had what's called the Court Leadership Conference. We brought all of the leadership in the judiciary. That means all the presiding judges and court administrators and juvenile and adult probation directors down to Star Pass in Tucson. And we had a meeting, and we didn't wear masks, and we were all in one room back together again. And that really was the theme of the day. The conversation was, isn't it great to be back together again? Isn't it good to have an opportunity to see old friends and to actually get things back to normal? So thank you for having me here. Thank you for having me here in person. I've been the Chief Justice of the state of Arizona for about 2 years now. And as Sam mentioned, I had this plan for what I wanted to accomplish. We call it the strategic plan. And I'll tell you about the strategic plan a little bit, about how it's created, and a little bit about what it says. And very little of that happened. Just like with all of you, the world changed last March, and all of a sudden things were different and we were operating differently. So let me tell you a little bit about my role and a little bit about the court system. Basically, as the Chief Justice of the state, I've got two roles. One role is to preside over the operations of the Arizona Supreme Court. Now, I will tell you that presents a bit of a management challenge. I used to be a trial judge. And what trial judges do is they tell people what to do. Trial judges order. Well, I work with 6 other justices. They're all very independent, as are the judges of the Court of Appeals. They have very strong opinions. They're all independently elected. They're smart. They're articulate. Again, they have strong opinions. They refer to the Chief Justice in the United States Supreme Court as primus inter pares. That's Latin for first among equals, which means that I have no real authority over any of them. And I don't get to tell them what to do. But in truth, it's a great group of people. They're very thoughtful. They're very hardworking. I really enjoy the conferences, even though I don't win all the arguments anymore. And it's a great place to work. And the second role of the Chief Justice is to serve as the head of Arizona's judicial branch, the third branch of government, along with the legislative and the executive branches. And that also turns out to be something of an undertaking, particularly in the face of a pandemic. So let me take a minute and tell you a little bit about Arizona's courts. Arizona's Supreme Court has 7 justices. You may recall that's a fairly recent addition. It occurred in 2017 when the legislature determined that it was appropriate to expand the court from 5 justices to 7. In the main, that's been a good thing. We got 2 new colleagues. They're very good people. They work very hard. We've got an even greater diversity of intellectual opinion, and that's a good thing as well. To the extent that they thought it was going to make it more efficient, they're mistaken about that. That's not what happened. But it has been a good thing. We have 1 intermediate court of appeals, the Arizona Court of Appeals. It has 2 branches. One sits in Phoenix, one sits in Tucson. There are 22 judges total. Judge Thumb, of course, is the judge on that court, as is my wife, Jennifer. The judicial branch is managed by the Chief Justice, the Chief Judges of the Court of Appeals, 15 Superior Court judge presiding judges, and the administrative office of the courts. And we operate with the advice of the Arizona Judicial Council. Now, the administrative office of the courts is a surprisingly big operation for something that nobody's ever heard of. It has more than 400 employees and a budget of almost $200 million. It operates throughout the state of Arizona. That doesn't include county budgets for courts. Maricopa's budget alone is almost $300 million. Total budgets for all courts in the state of Arizona is more than $790 million. And we collect about $378 million a year in fines and fees and other charges for the court system. So you can see it's a pretty big operation. We operate more than 200 court facilities in the state, including juvenile detention centers where children accused of crimes are held. And we operate detention schools in each of those counties as well. Arizona has more than 500 judges, both full and part-time, and more than 10,000 employees statewide. Arizona has a single general jurisdiction court, the Superior Court. It has locations in all 15 counties. There are 180 Superior Court judges in the state, the majority of which are right here in Maricopa County, along with 111 full or part-time court commissioners. Arizona has 3 counties where there's just 1 judge. So you can see there's a broad variety in the courts. And Maricopa, again, has 98 elected judges, 63 commissioners, and is the 4th largest trial court in the nation. We have justice in municipal courts in every county. There are 85 justices of the peace and 128 full or part-time municipal judges. In the year 2020, almost 2 million cases were filed in Arizona courts. The vast majority of those were filed in justice courts or municipal courts, more than 1.7 million of those cases, and the vast majority of those were civil traffic cases. So if you got a parking ticket, you're part of that number, or you got a speeding ticket, you're part of that number. About 180,000 of those cases were filed in superior courts. They're the more serious cases. They're larger civil lawsuits, domestic relations cases, divorces and the like, juvenile cases, and of course, felony criminal cases. Interestingly for me, case filings across the state of Arizona are down. And I'm trying to hold this microphone loud enough so that you all can hear me. If you can't, please let me know. Criminal felony cases in the state of Arizona are down by almost 10,000 cases this year. That's a good thing, of course. But the less crime is always a good thing. Family law cases are down about 7,000 cases statewide. The only cases that are up in the state of Arizona in 2000 are civil commitment cases. Civil commitment cases are the cases where somebody is deemed to be mentally ill and it required court-ordered treatment. Go figure as to why those cases would be up. Interestingly as well, juvenile crime is down. As one of my colleagues puts it, for some reason, teenage boys aren't committing crimes anymore. And you can speculate as to why that might be. I've heard the theory that it's video games or what's that, Fortnite, is that the game? I don't, that might be. In addition, we've got 86,000 people on probation, adult probation, and more than 3,500 juveniles on probation. And Arizona has changed a great deal over the last decade. It used to be we had large numbers of kids in detention. The thought on that has changed completely. And right now in Arizona, any given day, there are only about 30 kids in detention statewide. So those numbers have dropped dramatically and presented us with an interesting problem in terms of what do we do with the huge facilities that we have that we no longer need. And a wide variety of things have been done with that. I'm proud to say that Arizona has a reputation for being a leader in justice system reform. And I'll give you just a couple of quick examples. Arizona was the first place where we had real jury reform. If you've done jury service in the state of Arizona, you know the jurors can ask questions. You know the jurors in civil cases can get together before the verdict and talk about the case. You know the jurors are provided with instructions so that they know what's going on in the case from the first day of the trial. That didn't happen in other states, and it still doesn't happen in a lot of other states. That started here in Arizona. Arizona's been a leader in civil justice reform and civil discovery reform. The idea that civil litigation is too expensive and it's too slow and it's too complex. And so we've taken steps to try and change that, to have reasonable discovery rules so that the amount of discovery that you can require from the person you're suing is limited to what's reasonable in the case, that it bears some relationship to the amount that you're asking for in the case. Arizona is the leader in online dispute resolution. The idea that we can do a lot of this virtually, even before the pandemic, to give people access to the courthouse 24/7 and make it easier for them to get their cases resolved. And we're a leader in juvenile justice reform, particularly dependency reform. That is where children are taken away from their family because they're being abused and neglected. Arizona was an early adopter of what's called the Model Court Project. Cases in Arizona move very quickly through that system, which is a real positive. We're also a leader in access to justice initiatives, and I mentioned that primarily because Sam Thumb is going to be taking over as the chair of that committee. And they have a wide variety of initiatives that help give people access to the justice system in a reasonable and inexpensive fashion. To give you an example, in Maricopa County, 90% of the people who get a divorce, go to a domestic relations case, are unrepresented by counsel. Most of them not because they want to be unrepresented, but because they can't afford a lawyer to walk them through that process. And it's a complex process. If you go to southern Arizona to Santa Cruz County, that number rises to 90% of people that can't afford representation to get their rights resolved, to get their cases handled as they need handled. So we've been trying to come up with ways, and the Access to Justice Committee is really in the forefront of that, to help people negotiate that system and to get them the access to justice they need. We're a leader in bail reform. The idea that we ought to keep people in jail because they're a risk to the community, not because they don't have enough money in their pocket to be able to get out. And if you want to talk about that, I'd love to. There's some really good reasons that we do that. And last but not least, mental health. We have an ongoing initiative with regard to mental health reform in Arizona's courts. And the idea is that every time a person has contact with the justice system, we ought to be able to identify mental health issues right from the first time they meet a police officer to the time they get out of prison, and that we ought to be able to get them out of the jail system and get them out of the justice system and get them into the mental health system where they can get the treatment that they need. So, and again, if you'd like to talk about that, and Sam, if you could tell me when I'm about 20 minutes into this, because I'm afraid I'm going to run out of time. Sam mentioned the strategic agenda. So every 5 years, we elect a new Chief Justice in the state of Arizona. And for the last 25 years, that Chief Justice has created a strategic agenda. And it's a statewide effort. We bring people from all levels of court, from all around the state of Arizona, as well as stakeholders, like the county attorney, like the boards of supervisors, people that have an interest in what the court system does. And we get them together and we talk about what do we want to do to advance the branch forward. And we look at the ideas and we select the ones we like, and then we vet that with all of the court bureaucracy so that everybody in the court system gets a look at that and gets an opportunity to have input into that. And then we create a document which is printed up and is given to everybody in the court system and to anybody in the public that wants one. And you can find it on our website as well. And the idea is that tells the bureaucracy. I hate to refer to them that way, but it really is a bureaucracy. And as I said earlier, it's a huge bureaucracy. And the idea is to provide some guidelines to say, these are the things that we're interested in. This is the direction that we're going to take. These are the things. We've got hundreds of potential projects. Here are the ones we're going to emphasize. These are the ones we're going to try to use to make a difference in how the justice system operates in the state of Arizona. Sam's already talked about what the goals of that strategic agenda are. And so I got started as the Chief Justice, and I started going around the state. I visited all 15 counties. I've been to just about every courthouse in the state of Arizona to find out what's going on in those counties. And I discovered a fascinating thing, and that is that the problems that you have in Maricopa County are completely different, as are the resources, to the problems I had in Yavapai County as the presiding judge. And they're different from the problems that the presiding judge in a one-judge county like Apache has, where it's a small population, where the major industry is a coal-fired electric plant that everybody knows is going to go away. And so they're looking at how do we plan for the future. In fact, I was rather pointedly informed that I didn't realize, I said, I'm a small town judge. And he said, you're not a small town judge. I'm a small town judge. You don't understand. Well, maybe I didn't. And so I had a lot to learn. And then, of course, the pandemic. And we were actually the first court in the nation to enter a pandemic-related order to say, look, we've got to start thinking about what it is we're going to do here. And I will tell you that our view, my view in particular, from the very beginning, was that courts had to remain open. We had to provide some level of service. The reality is people have constitutional rights. They have cases that are important to them, which are not going to wait even for a pandemic. So if you're being deprived of your liberty while you're waiting for trial, you can't wait a year till we resolve the pandemic issues. If you're in the middle of a domestic relations dispute and you're fighting about custody and your spouse won't give you the children for visits, that's not going to wait for a year. If children are being abused or neglected, or you need an order of protection because you're being abused in the home, that's not going to wait for a year. And all the regular laws still apply. So if statute of limitations continue to run, you've got to have a way to file the case. But at the same time, we recognized that we needed to keep our employees safe and we needed to keep the public safe. And we recognize that unlike other businesses out there in the world, we don't really offer people a choice about whether they're going to come to court. We send you a summons, we expect you to be there, and bad stuff happens if you don't show up. So we needed to make sure that people felt as safe as we could possibly make them feel in the courthouse. So we mandated masks, we mandated social distancing. We basically stopped jury trials for a while. And we widely distanced people. And we only let essential people into the courthouse. That became controversial later when the press started to say, we need access to see these proceedings, and the Constitution says they're supposed to be public. And we said, you're absolutely right. They are supposed to be public, and we want them to be public. We want the public to see what we do. but we've got limited space. And we tried to find ways to work around that, pool reporters and that sort of thing. We did all those things, but we never closed the courthouses. We never closed the clerk's offices, and judges continued to work and to hold hearings. We went to Zoom. The Arizona Supreme Court went to Zoom oral arguments, which I have to tell you, I hate. And I hated them primarily because it's impossible to get a lawyer to stop talking. If you can't get his attention while he's on the Zoom. We expanded e-filing program. Now in the state of Arizona, you can e-file any type of case, any place in the state of Arizona pretty much, as opposed to having to come to the courthouse. Virtual hearings became the norm. And as I was talking to these folks, the truth is, and I'm in my 60s now, we've got some older people in the justice system. And maybe it's a function of age, but older people don't tend, at least judges don't tend to, some of them don't tend to adopt technology very well. So I certainly had judges who would say to me, I'm never going to do an online hearing. I'm not interested in video hearings. I need to be able to see the people. I don't like telephonic hearings. I don't like having this doggone computer on my desk. I used to work for a presiding judge who didn't know how to type, but insisted on having a computer at his desk. And if you want to talk about, and I really appreciated the invitation because I think it said it exactly right. I mean, with all of the bad things that have happened, it provided some real opportunities. And frankly, that was an opportunity. It was the opportunity to say to people, if you want to stay in business, you have to do this. And by golly, they did. And now nobody thinks twice about having a Zoom hearing. That's the way we do business. Will we change that again? Yeah, I think we probably will. But we won't change all the way. And we'll talk about that a little bit. Trying to manage and trying to get appropriate orders for a system as large as the state of Arizona's system was an interesting undertaking. And what we ended up doing was having weekly calls with all of the court leadership. So once a week, I would have a call with all of the presiding judges, and we would talk about what's different in your county, what do you need from us, how can we help you, what sort of order should I enter? And so there was a consistent administrative order telling judges around the state, here's what the rules are, here's how you handle this stuff. And every time an issue came up, we'd sit down and talk about it, and we would adapt that rule to reflect the issues that we're having in the day. Early on, we also created what we called the Plan B Committee. And again, Sam Thum and Marcus Rankensmeyer, who is the Director of Court Services, chaired that. And the committee really was charged with a couple of things. He was charged with how do we deal with this pandemic, give us some ideas. But more importantly, he was charged with how do we come back? What are we going to do to get back to normal operations, and what should stay the same? And what should we continue to do even though we don't have to do it anymore? And I have to tell you, Stan and Marcus have done an outstanding job with that. They're recognized nationally. They present nationally on the stuff that Arizona did to get through that process. And the white papers they generated have become a model for the nation. And frankly, he was telling me he was presenting to New Zealanders the other day. So even the world. Court operations went virtual. We provided Zoom licenses. We provided additional bandwidth, telephone call lines. We started trying to deal with the digital divide. In some places in Arizona, we'll provide you devices so that you can show up in court hearings. We made continuances readily available, and we extended deadlines and court rules in order to give people the relief they needed in order to continue to do business when things were limited. So for instance, it used to be in Arizona that you had, depending on the type of trial, as many as 6 or 8 peremptory strikes. We've now limited that to 2 in some cases and abolished it entirely. In others, you had an automatic right to a notice of change of judge. We got rid of that for the period of the pandemic. We've extended a number of rules, and we will continue to reevaluate those as things go on. Probably the thing that got the most public attention was evictions. And evictions is a tremendous problem. I mean, we had lots of people unemployed. I think everybody recognized that if you take people and put them out on the street, that's not going to make the pandemic any better. In fact, it's going to make it worse. But we also recognized that landlords had rights and that landlords need to make their mortgage payments just like we all do. And it's hard to do that if you're not getting the rent. And then, of course, the feds intervened. So we had an executive order from the governor We had a CDC order. We had a CARES Act order. I think we've now got a Consumer Financial Protection order. And so the issue for us was trying to figure out how do we comply with Arizona law as it has now been modified by the feds. And some people did a tremendous job of that, particularly the Justice of the Peace, and particularly the Justice of the Peace here in Maricopa County. They issued a number of eviction guidelines documents. We got them together and said, look, you guys have to standardize operations because we're getting complaints from the landlords who don't know what's going to happen in various courts. They got together and did that. We've offered them all online training, which they have participated in. We've tried to come up with ways so that landlords have to be fair with tenants in terms of getting the CARES Act money and applying it the right way. We've got backlogs. We're going to continue to have backlogs, but I think they've done a tremendous job trying to negotiate that process and being fair to everybody involved. And we still have regular bi-weekly stakeholders meetings with landlords and tenants and their respective lawyers and the JPs to talk about what needs to happen in this system. Jury trials and jury management's been a huge issue. We were talking about respect for the courts, as gentlemen and I. The interesting thing in Arizona, and this is true nationwide, is we don't try 2% of the cases. We try less than 1% of the civil cases and about 1.8% of the criminal cases in the state of Arizona to juries, and even a similar number of bench trials. So we don't try very many cases. But when you start looking into what causes cases to get resolved, it turns out that the primary thing that resolves cases is the threat of a trial. And if you don't have the threat of a trial, nothing ever happens. And so we have tremendous backlogs of cases that need to get resolved, but we needed the credible threat, I should find a better word, the credible threat of a jury trial in order to cause people to pick up their files and recognize that they had to make a decision. Every county in the state of Arizona now is back to trying jury trials. We will try criminal cases first. Civil cases in a lot of counties are going to wait. Although we've been doing some really interesting things. So in Mojave County, I just signed an administrative order creating a pilot project in Mojave County to let them do jury trials and civil cases completely virtually so that your whole trial will be online. And we're going to see how that works. They've done some other innovating things. Mojave County was the first county in the nation to do virtual grand jury proceedings. The grand jury, of course, is the body you take criminal cases to get indictments. They started doing it completely online. And they've had tremendous success with it, so much so that I've had calls from at least 2 other chief justices saying, can I talk to these people? We'd really like to do that. So potentially huge issues. Another real benefit of this was virtual hearings and virtual meetings in jail. Now, we've been trying for years to do online initial appearances. And we've gotten a tremendous amount of pushback. We'd say to the defense lawyers, look, you have to be in the jail with your client. We're going to do this by video. We get a lawsuit. They say you can't, it's not constitutional, you can't do it. When this all started, then all of a sudden, and jails would say, look, we don't really want to provide those spaces. We don't want to provide that technology. But then all of a sudden, jails, with the pandemic, jails started saying, we don't want these people in the jail. We want to limit access to the jail as much as we can because we want to limit that vector of potential infection. So they created the video booth where they'll take an inmate down. And they provided access for the lawyers. And so now we regularly do initial appearances and other hearings in criminal cases where everybody is virtual. One of the biggest complaints that I would get, and I see them in what are called Rule 32 petitions, where people are complaining that they were not treated fairly and that the criminal case ought to get set aside, was the assertion that my lawyer never came to see me in jail. And now judges are telling me that's not a problem anymore. Because if I don't have to drive down to the jail and get in the jail, I just have to pick up the phone or get on my computer, I'm much more likely to see my clients. They're just saying we're not getting those complaints. Same thing's true of evictions. In the typical eviction calendar, somewhere between 60 and 80% of the people that were the tenants didn't show up. Now we're doing virtual hearings in evictions cases. And something like 60 to 80% are showing up. Because it's convenient for them to get there. They can do it without having to give up a full day of work. And that's working out pretty well. I got to be close to, we got about 10 minutes left. One final issue, and then I'd like to take questions if you have any. we are very concerned about racial fairness and equal treatment in our courts, which is to say, the job of a court is to treat everybody the same. That is, similarly, people in similar situations need to get treated the same, and it shouldn't matter what color their skin. And so we started asking the questions: are we in fact doing it? And I think the short answer is we don't know. We don't know because we don't have the data. And so the big thing for me is we need to get the data. Now, we've got reasonably good data on who we hire. I can tell you racial breakdowns along with a whole bunch of other information as to who the judges are. And we match pretty closely the graduates from law school, which is important because you have to be a judge, you have to be a lawyer to be a judge, generally speaking, except for the JPs. It does not match the overall breakdown in society at all, but that's a separate set of issues. But if you ask me, do minority jurors get to serve on juries at a rate which reflects their representation of the population? My answer generally would be, I don't know. Now, we have got some data from Maricopa County, and I will tell you we do pretty well. But we don't know about the rest of the state. All I can tell you is we're going to find out. Same thing is true of mental health. Same thing is true of domestic relations. Do they get to the hearings at the same rate? Are they represented at the same rate? We don't know. But we know we need the data. We know we need to find out. Is there disproportionate contact with minorities with the criminal justice system and the juvenile justice system? I think the data would reflect that that's absolutely true. What the data doesn't reflect is why. And the data reflects the fact that there is contact and they have greater contact with police, but it does not reflect how they are handled in the justice system once they get there. We need to know the answers to those questions. We're also very interested in specific issues. So we had a rather large meeting with the Arizona Judicial Council and our Commission on Minorities and selected other people. And we talked about what are specific action steps that we can take in order to make a difference. The result of that is we've done some more bail reform work. If you're in jail more than 48 hours, you're going to get a hearing, you're going to get a lawyer. So we can talk about why haven't you gotten out if release conditions have been set. We've created a task force on the issuance of no-knock warrants. Not because we are categorically opposed to no-knock warrants, but we understand that that's a place where people get hurt. Or if you make a mistake, somebody dies. And so we want to make sure that the judges know what to do and that there's proper authority so they don't get issued unless it's really, really necessary. We're going to do the same thing with plea agreements. They have a discussion about whether plea policies around the state of Arizona reflect equal treatment across the board. We've got a number of justice reform issues in the pipeline. The most exciting one right now is alternative business structures. That is allowing non-lawyer investment in law firms and what we call legal paraprofessionals. The idea that you have somebody like a physician's assistant, somebody who's got some training in a specific area of law who could provide lower cost services to the people that need that. Those are exciting things. More on that as we see how it works out over the next couple of years. And with that, I'll stop and I would answer any questions that you care to ask. I will. I'll do that. Yes, sir. Yeah. Right. The question is, did the expansion of the court help from 5 to 7 help the court? And the answer is yes and no. I mean, I opposed it at the time, and my assertion at the time was, we don't need it. So, greater diversity of thought, interesting opinions, great people to work with, all that stuff's true. We are less efficient with 7 than we are at 5. And if you think about it, it makes sense. And what happens if I issue a draft opinion, I send it to all the other 6 of my colleagues and all 12 of their law clerks, and they weigh in on it. If I was only going to do it with 4 colleagues and 8 law clerks, I'd get it back a lot quicker. Yeah. That's true. That's absolutely true. And we can argue about whether those made sense or not. How we handle what? Mental health. Sure. I'm no expert. The question is, how do we address the link between mental health and homelessness? And there clearly is a link. I mean, if you start dealing with homeless people in any numbers, you recognize that the majority of them have some kind of mental illness. From our perspective, what we're trying to do is make sure that we can identify people with mental illness and that we can provide them with appropriate services, because usually if you can provide treatment, you can change some of the circumstances that cause them to be where they are. So for me, it's important that we identify them, and it's important that we can access the services which allow them to get appropriate treatment. And I will tell you, we've made some really great strides in that regard. For instance, Maricopa County now has crisis intervention centers. It used to be that a police officer would spend half a day taking somebody to the emergency room who had a mental illness issue. They tell me now the average time a police officer waits to get somebody into the process at a crisis intervention center is between 3 and 5 minutes. So in terms of a net win for everybody involved, that's worked out pretty well. And that's entirely access funded. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I think I understand the question, which basically what are we trying to do to get people back into the community when they get out of prison? First point is there isn't any parole anymore, and there aren't any parole officers. And unfortunately in Arizona, the way that the state has dealt with that, and this has kind of just evolved, is we have like 27,000 people now who are eligible for what's called a probation table. So what happened is the judge sentenced the person to prison, but also sentenced them to probation when they get out. And the idea really is to be able to provide that kind of supervision. The problem is they didn't take the money from parole and shift it to probation. So we have a budgetary problem, and it's mostly a manpower problem, trying to figure out how we're going to fund that and how we're going to provide the bodies we need in order to supervise those people. I couldn't agree more with the proposition that we've got to provide reentry services to get people back into the communities. I mean, if you put people back in the exact situation they came out of for however long they've been in prison, you're foolish to accept it and you think that you're going to get a different result. So we are working on reentry programs and trying to find ways to provide those services. Let me take this gentleman and then you, sir. You. I think the answer to that is unequivocally yes, we're going to continue on with this. I think we've overcome a lot of the resistance to doing virtual hearings, both among the bar and among the judiciary. I think a lot of people recognize specifically in certain types of cases that it's just a more efficient way to proceed. For instance, I doubt we'll ever, with regard to evictions, I doubt we'll ever go back. But we will see. Let me get the gentleman in the back as I promised him. Well, that's an interesting, the question was, how do I think that technology has addressed the inequities in the justice system? And I'm not sure if I have an answer for that, except to say that it's made courthouses and courtrooms more accessible. I think online dispute resolution, for instance, is one way of addressing access to justice issues and will make access to justice more available to people who couldn't afford it before. I think the same thing is true of evictions, where it makes it easier for people who otherwise have jobs and can't take off to get to the courthouse to protect their rights. I recognize there's another side to that, what's commonly referred to as the digital divide. So that if you can't afford a computer or you can't afford the internet, or you don't have internet available, if you live in rural Arizona, for instance, then those access issues are pretty serious. And we're looking at ways to address those. We can now provide people with a computer which will only do one thing, which is connect to the core. So it's not useful for anything else, but so we're trying to figure out ways that we can make that technology available in a broader way. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I did not hear that. Well, that's a great question. Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. The question is, what are juvenile courts doing differently instead of detaining children? I think it is primarily a recognition that detention wasn't making them better. So that we could find a way to provide services where they are, to provide accountability where they are. And I can tell you, my experience is everybody's terrified to go to jail, and that's certainly true of juveniles. But after a day or two, you figure out, hey, I can do this, and I'm a tough guy. So it turns out that it was really effective in terms of controlling people, but it ultimately wasn't very effective in terms of controlling their behavior. And so really the philosophy changed. So what we're doing is supervising them at home better. Are we out of time? Yeah, we are out of time. Thank you all very much.
I can see if there are any questions from the Zoom guests.
My time is yours.
All right, I want to just see if there are any questions from our Zoom guests. District. Well, goodness, it's not as easy to look everything up. Valerie, did you happen to notice, were there any questions from the Zoom guests?
I have not noticed any, but if anyone has a question, maybe to speak up or to say something in the chat.
I'd say go ahead and speak up. All right. That's terrific. Thank you so much. You know, I have to tell you, what a wonderful program. So informative and enlightening. And I think we probably could have taken even more time. And we really appreciate it. I want to thank Chief Justice Brutinel for that wonderful program. I want to remind everyone that Sunday, April 25th, is the old-fashioned breakfast with a twist. We're holding it at Alistair Adele's front yard from 9 to 11. Our next meeting is on Friday, May 7th. The program is Becoming Jihad, a Muslim kid's spiritual journey from the streets of Phoenix to teaching interreligious harmony. Sounds like another great program. I want to thank Andy Gutierrez, Jay Murphy, Ted Taylor, our IT guys for getting us set up, speakers, Zoom, all the applications. I really appreciate it. Happy Rotary Friday, everyone. This concludes our 21st General Membership meeting of the 107th year of Phoenix Rotary 100 and the 5,322nd overall meeting. Please be safe, get vaccinated if you're so inclined, and don't forget to wash your hands. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, guys.